Hey, Boris, thanks for joining me today. How was
My
everything?
pleasure. Well, hey, hanging in there. Doing the best we can based on these crazy circumstances.
A little crazy. I did sneak out of the house and went to the office today for a little insanity.
Okay.
But maintaining the social distance, we kind of closed down probably about 2 weeks before everybody else and everybody home. So everybody's been healthy in the company and getting out there to serve. But I appreciate your time today. You're a security expert. Wanted to talk to you. A lot's been in the news. Zoom has been doing phenomenal as a company until recently. They actually just launched their channel program, welcomed us to that about 3.5 weeks ago. So they're now one of the 20 products we have for customers to use for video or conferencing bridging. But just in the last 2 weeks, the media has gotten pretty tough on them with a lot of new security vulnerabilities coming out. So I wanted to bring you in to discuss that with us. You might give us a little background on what's out there and go a little bit into what those concerns are for the layman and for the schools, which we have a lot of customers in that segment too.
And quite honestly, my kids' school, they do the majority of their lessons via Zoom. And by and large, it's a great application, but you just need to be smart while using it. Now, just like you say, they've really raised their profile, and with that increased profile, there's increased scrutiny. One of the things that we see in the news quite a bit now is Zoom bombing, and in fairness to Zoom, something like that could potentially happen with any other provider, providing that that provider or provided the meeting information isn't shared carefully. So if you're pasting it on social media or just blast it out via email, just about anyone who has that meeting ID can jump into the meeting, whether you want them to or not. Now, one of the things that Zoom has done, since this became a problem, they've required that every meeting have a password, and the host of the meeting has to admit each participant into the meeting before they can have access. So, I think that's going to mitigate a lot of the Zoom bombing issues pretty quickly.
Okay. Now, on top of the Zoom bombing, we've seen a number of discussions around. I just read recently about the Chinese servers and kind of some of their architecture that may leave them vulnerable. You want to go into a little detail about that?
They're I believe 600 or 700 of their developers are actually based in China, and at the same time they have a fair amount of data center space over there as well. So there could be times when traffic in the United States is routed through China. Now, if we're talking about just person-to-person communication where there's nothing sensitive going on, not that big of a deal, because those are backup servers, based on what I've read. But I know there are regulations for federal, state, and local government that their traffic cannot leave the United States. And so, if there's an outage here in the States, there is no barrier for Zoom clients traffic to passing through those servers offshore. And that can be a big problem, especially with some of the issues with China having backdoors into, I don't know if this is true or not, but that's what the research I've read has said, that many times that they'll require access at a very high level to the data centers or the applications that are being built onshore in China. So potentially we could have a conversation between state, local government or federal government being accessed by the Chinese, which is pretty darn scary.
Okay. That or the private sector. I mean, large scale negotiations, product knowledge. I read also about concerns about them selling personal data. Now, I have never seen clarification as to the depth, other than if you want to cover it, the Facebook challenges. But was that on their public free version? Do we know if it was on the private paid? Because that's a big difference, obviously, if you're taking a resource and not paying money for it. Typically, we've become used to losing our privacy. What do you know about that? And I'm not sure how much has come out yet.
Yeah, not a ton has come out. One of the things that they have admitted to is, that they're using the Facebook SDK for the Facebook Graph, and so they are sending traffic to Facebook and say, when you log on, when you log off, are you a Facebook member? Even if you are not, they've admitted they're actually sending that data to Facebook as well. And I don't know if there's a difference between the paid or the free version, but it's going on, and from what I've read, there is nothing in their terms of service that actually makes that apparent.
Okay. What other challenges are you seeing about Zoom? Well, let me take a stop, because this morning Eric Yon, the CEO, made a very public address. Number one, apologizing to the world and the market, but number two, dedicating the next 90 days of development into shoring up, 100% focus on security and securing the experience of the client. So hopefully these are all things that are going to be behind them in the short term, but not to mention at the same time where we've got, state solicitors now investigating, the FBI is now investigating. So obviously there's going to be a lot of light shed in the next 6 months to a year. What other things are you aware of that need to be brought out to the community as far as some challenges, things to work around with them?
The good thing about software is, it can be fixed, quote unquote, on the fly, right? That 90-day freeze will probably be really good for the company. In terms of things that I see, like right now, I know that their level of encryption isn't at the highest that it could be. Currently, I believe they're running AES 128. It could be 256. Now, even AES 128 encryption is really, really difficult to crack. But there's higher levels of encryption that can be applied. Especially, we're dealing with communication between just like you said, state and local government, federal government, private entities. So you want that communication to be rock solid, so that no one can actually hop on and listen or interrogate those calls. Honestly, I think these guys are on the right track. First thing saying, hey, our fault, we made a mistake. Hey, we're all human. But it remains to be seen, what they do if these guys can follow on. Because one of the reasons they're so popular, it's a great product.
It is.
There are some issues with it, but hey, there are issues with everything. But if these guys can do what what the mandate is, make sure this product is secure, I don't think anyone's gonna have any trouble using it in the future once they get some of these issues resolved. And quite honestly, I'm a 100th of the developer that I'm sure these guys have on staff, but these items can be resolved fairly quickly.
Now, what are your thoughts? So we've got numerous companies, like our systems, actually Zoom is one of the platforms that we use, tied to our PBX system, our hosted UC system. But it's a private instance. So they're running their own servers with the Zoom software on it, and they're running it in their data centers, encrypted, and they're actually doing AES 256, because I confirmed that today. So, it's interesting because there's ways to get the Zoom experience that from a security standpoint may have different types of experience, right? Or licensing too, users in a room, etc. So, we've been running down, validating some of that with some of the providers to see, are they running their own private? How are they doing that? What encryption levels are they supporting? But then I assume, in some of those levels, you may have some of these overlaps where if you're not properly securing the room with either the administrator authentication or the password authentication to add a user in, you could, be a victim of the bombing as well, right?
The bottom line is you have to be responsible, with as with anything, right? You have to be responsible with that admin access. You need to be responsible with your password. That is 95% of the Zoom bombing, issue. Folks being careful with, those usernames and those passwords. And now if they have a private instance, if everything is in-house, then you're able to increase the level of security, right? You're not on the public cloud, you're in your own private cloud. So everything kind of stops at the data center's edge.
Right. And I think there's also a social etiquette thing that needs to be learned. So if you're the administrator or you need an administrator to sit at these meetings, I mean, I've been in a segment for 15 years, where we've been providing conferencing and different sorts. And there's some legendary stories. I won't go in here because I'm still friends with all these people, but there's some legendary stories of video conferences that maybe somebody didn't know they were on video. Even heard a brand new one this weekend. Mind-blowingly funny. Not going to repeat it here, but I'm sure we've all heard or seen our own instances. So I think that's important that the administrator, whether it's a teacher running a meeting or an executive running a meeting, stay close to the control panel. Be ready to mute. Be ready to shut them off video. Just be ready for whatever crazy could come your way, from the human nature aspects, especially as we're all working from home, and who knows what's going on in other rooms of the house that may migrate into that room.
Folks should think of it as live TV, right? You have a control room and they are ready for whatever happens. The administrator needs to be that director.
Because I'm sure there's going to be a lot more stories as the use goes up, and we'll get some giggles out of them. Hopefully too many people won't be traumatized.
I can see some memes and some viral YouTube videos coming out really soon.
Yep, I imagine. Well, Boris, I appreciate your time today, and we'll get back with you on some other security concerns here in the future.
It was my pleasure as well. Thank you so much.
Thank you.